You have to speak on behalf. Not everybody has that microphone in front of their face. And I think as women in sports, it's a responsibility you kind of have to take.
She was asked, how did you stand up for women everywhere?
The WNBA currently reflects a distinct divide in how its newest stars approach the professional offseason. This separation is defined less by geography and more by the tension between athletic development and brand management. One rookie is treating the hiatus as a period of intensive technical refinement, while the other faces public scrutiny following social media complications and high-profile appearances. This growing divide has prompted veterans to evaluate the long-term impact on the sport. While headlines often focus on viewership numbers and jersey sales, the internal reality of the league is becoming more fragmented. On one side is a player dedicated almost exclusively to the gym. On the other is a whirlwind of fashion critiques and red carpet events. This collision of priorities was a development Sue Bird anticipated, noting that the reality of professional competition eventually exposes those who lack focus. Public discourse intensified recently following Angel Reese's appearance at a high-profile event. Wearing a bold animal print gown, Reese drew significant criticism from fans who argued her attention was shifting toward a Hollywood persona rather than her responsibilities to the Chicago Sky. The resulting social media backlash led Reese to delete her Instagram profile. This incident highlighted a changing narrative where followers and personal aesthetics are increasingly weighed against on-court statistics. In contrast, Caitlin Clark has spent her offseason in Indiana focused on methodical skill development. Reports indicate Clark is working to rebuild elements of her game, specifically focusing on her mid-range shooting and left-hand proficiency. This level of dedication is what veterans describe as the necessary work to transition from a star into a legacy player. While others manage their public image, Clark's focus remains on breaking down defensive schemes and physical conditioning. Sue Bird has been vocal about the risks associated with the influencer model of professional sports. Bird recently addressed the debate between the approaches of Clark and Reese, stating that while building a brand is financially beneficial, it is a dangerous strategy for an athlete's professional legacy. Bird noted that social media followers do not contribute to performance during critical game moments. She pointed to Clark's commitment to invisible hours, the training that occurs away from cameras, as the gold standard for the league. Bird also utilized LeBron James as a benchmark for professional conduct. She noted that James has successfully built a global empire while never compromising his physical preparation or training schedule. The comparison suggests that if the most successful players in history treat the weight room as a priority, rookies cannot afford to treat it as an afterthought. Bird's primary concern is that when celebrity status overshadows competitive drive, the quality of the game suffers. The shift toward brand building is partly driven by the economic reality of the league. With the average WNBA salary at approximately $124,000, many players feel compelled to use social media and secondary leagues to supplement their income. However, Bird warns that this financial pressure can create a cycle where the side hustle begins to compromise the main hustle. The fame generated by the sport can quickly erode the focus required to play it at an elite level. The exclusion of both Clark and Reese from the Olympic roster served as a pivotal moment for both players. For Clark, the decision appeared to serve as motivation for further training. For Reese, it became another chapter in a public narrative regarding her status in the league. Bird encouraged both players to use the disappointment as fuel, though the results of that motivation look different in each case. One is focused on technical improvement, while the other remains centered on her public persona. Ultimately, the league is witnessing a conflict between the pursuit of greatness and the pursuit of stardom. While a public relations team can manufacture a star, the dedication required for athletic greatness cannot be simulated for a social media feed. Sue Bird's observations serve as a broader warning to the WNBA. As the next season approaches, the league will see whether a foundation built on training or a facade built on media presence is more sustainable. The contrast between these two philosophies will likely define the trajectory of the sport for years to come. The economic framework of the WNBA is currently undergoing its most significant shift since the league's inception in 1996. This transformation is driven by a convergence of record-breaking media rights negotiations and a new generation of players whose off-court earnings dwarf their professional salaries. The disparity between a rookie-scale contract and a multi-million-dollar endorsement portfolio creates a unique set of pressures. In previous eras, WNBA players sought financial stability through winter seasons in the EuroLeague or the Russian Premier League. Today, the alternative to overseas play is no longer just rest. It is the monetization of personal brand equity. The league's prioritization rule, established in the 2020 collective bargaining agreement, has acted as a catalyst for this change. By requiring players to report to training camp on time or face significant fines and suspensions, the league effectively forced a choice between lucrative international contracts and domestic availability. For players like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, the financial incentive to play abroad is mitigated by the domestic demand for their presence in commercials, podcasts, and fashion campaigns. However, this shift alters the traditional developmental arc of a professional basketball player. In the past, the offseason was spent playing competitive games in Istanbul or Yekaterinburg, which served as a high-intensity laboratory for skill refinement. Without that structure, the responsibility for development falls entirely on the individual athlete and their private training staff. This individualized approach to the offseason has led to a divergence in technical outcomes. Professional scouts point to the rookie wall as a physical and mental threshold that occurs when the intensity of the professional game exceeds a player's preparation. Clark's decision to focus on physical conditioning and shooting mechanics suggests an awareness of the physical toll of a 40-game season. Analysts have noted that her offensive gravity requires a level of cardiovascular endurance that is difficult to maintain without a rigorous, science-based training program. By focusing on her left-hand finishes and mid-range efficiency, she is addressing the specific defensive adjustments the league made during her first season. This is a move toward professional sustainability, ensuring that her game evolves faster than the scouting reports can adapt. Conversely, the influencer model presents a different set of challenges. The labor required to maintain a high-engagement social media presence is significant. It involves travel, content production, and consistent public appearances, all of which occur during the same hours typically reserved for recovery and skill work. The risk is not necessarily a lack of effort, but a fragmentation of focus. In professional sports, the margin for error is increasingly narrow. A decrease of even 5% in shooting accuracy or defensive lateral quickness can be the difference between a playoff contender and a lottery team. When a player's primary income is decoupled from their on-court performance, the intrinsic motivation to endure the boring aspects of training is tested. The introduction of the Unrivaled League, a 3-on-3 professional circuit co-founded by Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, represents a middle ground in this debate. By offering high salaries and equity stakes, the league aims to provide a domestic playing option that keeps athletes sharp without the grueling travel of European basketball. This format emphasizes individual skill, spacing, and conditioning, providing a structured environment for players who might otherwise spend the winter focusing on brand management. The participation of top-tier talent in this league will serve as a litmus test for whether the WNBA's new stars can balance their commercial interests with a competitive playing schedule. The veteran response to this shifting landscape has been one of cautious observation. Figures like Diana Taurasi and Kelsey Plum have spoken about the necessity of maintaining the sanctity of the gym. Their perspective is rooted in an era where the WNBA fought for basic visibility. To these veterans, the sudden influx of fame and capital is a double-edged sword. While they welcome the growth of the league, they express concern that the fundamental product, the quality of basketball, could be diluted if the next generation prioritizes the gram over the game. This is not merely a generational clash, it is a professional critique of how excellence is achieved and sustained. The upcoming media rights deal, which is projected to increase from $60 million to potentially over $200 million annually, will likely reshape these incentives again. As the league's revenue grows, player salaries are expected to rise accordingly, potentially narrowing the gap between professional pay and endorsement income. This could alleviate some of the pressure on players to maintain a constant social media presence to supplement their earnings. However, until that capital is distributed, the reliance on external branding remains a structural necessity for many. The psychological impact of this 24/7 visibility cannot be ignored. The modern rookie enters the league under a level of surveillance that was non-existent 10 years ago. Every missed shot, every outfit choice, and every social media interaction is analyzed by millions. This environment creates a high-stress feedback loop. For a player like Reese, the decision to delete a social media profile is often a defensive measure against the toxicity of digital discourse. For a player like Clark, the scientist approach may serve as a psychological buffer, a way to ground her identity in tangible, measurable progress rather than the shifting tides of public opinion. This period of the WNBA's history will likely be remembered as the era of the Great Decoupling. The sport is moving away from its status as a niche interest and into the mainstream of the global entertainment economy. In this transition, the definition of a professional athlete is being rewritten. It is no longer enough to be proficient on the court. Players are now expected to be CEOs of their own media companies. The danger lies in the possibility that the CEO role eventually consumes the athlete. The physical reality of the sport remains unchanged. The WNBA is a league defined by its physicality and its defensive intensity. No amount of digital engagement can compensate for a lack of strength in the post or a slow rotation on defense. The invisible hours that Sue Bird referenced are the foundation upon which the league was built. As the commercial stakes rise, the value of those hours only increases. The players who find a way to integrate their public personas with a relentless commitment to their craft will be the ones who define the league's next decade. The contrast in off-season strategies also highlights a broader shift in how sports organizations manage their assets. Teams are now investing more heavily in personal trainers, nutritionists, and mental health coaches to protect their investments. The Indiana Fever's support of Clark's technical focus and the Chicago Sky's management of Reese's public profile represent two different organizational philosophies. One prioritizes the development of a generational scoring talent through traditional athletic discipline, while the other navigates the complexities of a high-profile personality who brings unprecedented attention to the franchise. Both approaches carry risks and rewards. As the 2026 season approaches, the league stands at a crossroads. The data from the previous year suggests that while the influencer model drives initial engagement and ticket sales, long-term viewership is sustained by competitive, high-quality basketball. The rivalry between the gym rat and the Instagram queen is a compelling narrative for television, but its longevity depends on both players remaining elite competitors. If the performance gap between the two widens significantly, the narrative would lose its tension. The league needs both the excellence of the laboratory and the energy of the red carpet to thrive, but the balance between the two remains precarious. The historical parallels are often drawn to the NBA in the 1980s, when Magic Johnson and Larry Bird revitalized a struggling league. While their personalities were vastly different, their commitment to winning was identical. They understood that their off-court opportunities were a direct result of their on-court dominance. The current WNBA rookies are operating in a far more complex media environment, but the fundamental principle remains the same. The platform is provided by the game. If the game falters, the platform eventually collapses. The paycheck protest and the conversation around salary equity will continue to be a central theme in the WNBA's evolution. As players become more aware of their market value, they will continue to push for a larger share of the league's growing revenue. This financial activism is a sign of a maturing league, but it also adds another layer of responsibility for the players. They are not just athletes, they are advocates and entrepreneurs. The challenge for the modern WNBA player is to fulfill all these roles without losing the competitive edge that earned them a place in the league to begin with. The truth that Bird and other veterans are pointing to is that professional sports are ultimately a meritocracy. The lights of the arena are indifferent to a player's follower count. In the closing minutes of a playoff game, the only thing that matters is the work that was done when no one was watching. The tension between the gym and the gram is a reflection of a society that increasingly values the image of success over the process of achieving it. In the WNBA, as in all professional sports, that process is non-negotiable. The next few years will determine if the WNBA can successfully integrate its newfound celebrity culture with its tradition of grit and technical excellence. The rookies of today are the veterans of tomorrow, and the habits they form now will dictate the culture of the league for the next 20 years. If the focus shifts too far toward the facade, the league risks becoming a spectacle rather than a sport. If it maintains its commitment to the grind, it has the potential to become one of the most significant athletic properties in the world. The answer will not be found in a viral post or a trending topic, but in the shooting percentages, the defensive stops, and the championships won on the court. The game, as always, will provide the final verdict.